Good afternoon, great scholars. I hope you are well. For those who don't know me, my name is Asi Pem Kalisa, and thank you for joining the CPGS hashtag Workshops Wednesday, a research support engagement to make a research journey sweeter. I will be posting a link for you to evaluate our weekly workshops. These evaluations are anonymous and have been assisting us in better positioning our engagements in support of your suggestions as well as your needs. Today's workshop is focusing on formatting with Latex and JabRef. And joining us today is Prof. Karen Bradshaw, who is an associate professor in the Department of Computer Sciences at Rhodes University. She has been using LaTeX for many years as her main scientific paper and thesis writing tool, and has introduced it to all her postgraduate students over the past 16 years, when we also have the privilege to learn from Prof. Bradshaw. Over to you, Prof.
Hello and welcome, everyone. Gosh, I was just quickly scrolling through to see how many had joined us, and I'm delighted that you're all wanting to find out about an alternative to Word. And I'm obviously not going to be able to teach you everything and to make you experts in this afternoon session, but I'm hoping that you can at least just understand what the tools are about and how they work. And if you're really interested, then you can start looking into them and start working with them and maybe, maybe adopting them. You never know. The reason I really like this LaTeX and JabRef combination is because it's one of the simplest ways of putting together references and academic text, or just text for that matter. I have used Word. Some of my students have used Word to write theses, and every time I pick up a Word thesis, I can tell it's written in Word, because there's always will be some kind of a formatting inconsistency, or one of the references hasn't been included because they forgot to add it, because it kind of doesn't happen automatically, or some people don't know how to make it happen automatically. And it just became clear to me that although there is a learning curve for using this LaTeX and JabRef combination, once you actually know what you're doing, and there's very little that you need to know to get started. Obviously, if you want to draw fancy or put together some really complicated tables, then you might have to learn a little bit more. But surprise, surprise, there's also plenty of sites on the internet which allow you to create tables in Excel, and it will then convert them into the code that you need to put into your LaTeX document. So what I'm going to do first is I'm first going to talk a little bit about JabRef. And JabRef is an alternative to Mendeley or one of the other reference managing systems. And the reason I really like it is because it's quite a small little program. It fits onto your computer quite nicely. You don't need internet to use it. And it's very simple to use and to create and to put in references that you might have found from your literature review. And it's exactly the right tool that you need to interface to the LaTeX writing tool, because the two talk the same language. And the language that they talk is a language called Bibtex. So Bibtex is just a format. It's a format that you can output references in. Some of you might have seen Bibtex being offered as a format when you find a reference and you go and look at its citation or how to cite it. They'll say, what do you want to do? Do you want to print it out in APA format? Do you want to print it out in sort of in plain text? Do you want to print it out? How do you want to print it out? And Bibtex is normally one of those options that you can do. Now, what I did ask is I said that anybody who wanted to kind of follow along or do some stuff on their own computer as I'm doing it, there were 2 links that I did provide in the original documentation that was posted about the workshop. And the first one is just the JabRef, which is the reference manager. And if I can just remember where where my little link is that I had for the thing, I should have actually put that in the chat to start with, which was a little bit amiss of me, but I can probably find it quite quickly. And let's just see here what I've got here. I'll just put it in the workshop. Just hold on. Apologies for this. I'm just trying to find the link that I need. And here is the link. Okay, so this will be the link to the Jabrief. I'm just going to put it into the chat in case some of you didn't actually pick it up beforehand. And oh, I'm working with too many screens at the moment as well. But anyway, there we go. So there we go. There's Overleaf. And there's the other one, which is the Jabrief software. And there's 2 links that you can actually download. So the one I'm going to first talk about is this Jabrief. And if you give me 2 minutes, I will start it up on my machine and then I will share my screen. Okay, let's share that screen. There we go. All right. Okay, so this is the little reference manager that I personally use and I encourage my students to use. When you start it or when you start a new library, for example, what you get set up with is something like this. And this is probably, if you've started up Jabrief, is what you're currently looking at, is just a very empty setup where you are now in a position to actually add some reference entries. And to add a reference entry, you do need to understand a little bit about the Bibtex format, because this is the format that the entries are going to get stored in. And to give you a little idea, I'm just going to go back to my populated library. Well, it's only got 1 entry in it. But what I really would like you to look at is what we're referring here is to the Bibtex source. So it's just a formatting way of setting up reference entries, which is used by quite a lot of reference managers. And it's a very old version of reference source. When LaTeX came out, or in fact, it wasn't even called LaTeX in those days, when TeX came out many years ago in the 1960s, this was the same format that was used for references. Now you can see what the format looks like. It's got an at and then something. And this is what we call the entry type. So at conference means that this entry that I've entered here, this reference that I've created, is a conference proceedings entry. And the reason that we have different entries is because they have different information. As you will know, there's different information to be stored for reference entries that are books or reference entries that are articles, etc. So there's a number of these kinds of entry types that the Bibtex provides for, and we'll go through a few of them. So the first thing you do is you've got the at conference or at article or at book, depending on what kind of reference you need to store. By the way, if you do need to stop me or ask a question, please just pop it into the chat. I will keep my eye on that as well as I go along. Then it starts, got a good curly brace and another curly brace at the end. These things are called curly braces, but don't worry about that because you're not going to have to actually do any of this. I'm just trying to explain what the formatting looks like. The next thing that you've got is what we call the key. And this is the only important part that you have to remember when you're writing your document, is you have to know what the key is to your particular references, because we're going to use that key when we want to cite this entry in our LaTeX document that we're going to be creating. And then you'll see that there's a whole lot of fields or attributes that this entry has. So for example, there's the author, And it's Martin Bicher and Christoph Vuroch and Nikki Popper. And I'm not even sure where I got this one from. Oh, it's a generic agent-based population model. I sort of work in computer simulations and that. So this would have been a fairly good reference for one of my papers. It then has the title of the place where it's being published, and that's the Proceedings of the 2018 Winter Simulation Conference. And there's the actual title of the article itself, which is a generic agent-based population model for Austria. There's an attribute field, it's a year, 2018. There's an address, if you need that, various months, pages, publishers, etc. And you can even download an abstract, which I tend to not do too often because there's another place where we can actually put abstracts, but there's a whole lot of fields. The program, is it cloud-based or desktop-based? Yes, you can actually back up onto your cloud. You can store your files that you create anywhere you wish to. So once you do the save as soon as you go up there and you do your save as library, you can store your files wherever you wish to have them. The program itself is going to be sitting on your laptop or your desktop. But of course, if that gets lost, it doesn't really matter because the only thing that's important is that your libraries, your bib libraries are stored somewhere safe. So you can use your cloud storage to store your .bib files. You can see that the ones at the top here are all .bib. And that's effectively what they get stored as. And I'll show you what they actually look like in text in a little minute or two as well. All right, so this is the Bibtex source that we really need. And this is the way that each entry is going to be stored in your library file. And where that resides is completely up to you. As I said, it can be in the cloud, it can be on your local desktop, it can be on a network server, wherever you choose it to be. And just to show you what the actual files look like, let me just stop that share. And I've just opened another notepad. Let's just make that a little bit larger and I'll share that one. Where are we looking at now? Hold on, I've just lost my, let's go with that one. Okay, this is just a text editor that I've opened. And this is the contents of one of my other bib files. And you can very clearly see in these ones that there's an @article is one of the first ones. And there's all the important information that I wanted to store about that article. There's another @article. Here you can see here are a couple of entries for books. Here's a book entry. You can even store URLs in it if you choose to. There's an in proceedings, which is very similar to the conference entry. The conference entry is what we used to call them a long time ago, and they're now typically being called in proceedings. But essentially, this is just a conference, an article in a conference proceedings. What else have I got here that might be interesting? I've got lots of in collections, books, articles. Oh, I've got a miscellaneous here. There's also a miscellaneous type. And we typically use the miscellaneous type to, if it's just a web and internet entry that hasn't been published anywhere, we can use a miscellaneous entry. And it's got also similar kinds of attributes or similar kinds of fields of information, and that are specific for URL reference entries. Articles in collection. An in collection is normally a book that you have chapters written by various people. So in collection would be if you were referencing something in one of those collections, whether you've got an editor, and you'll notice that you have additional fields here, things like the editor, because normally an in-collection book has an editor as opposed to a single author. So in-collection books, not sure that there's many others that I would use. Oh, there's a technical report. For those of you in the sciences, quite often we make use of technical reports, and you can have an entry for a technical report, and it gives you space to be able to put in the institution which the company was that created the technical report, the title, etc., the authors, and there's normally always a year associated, unless we don't have some of the internet entries might not have a year. Is there a specific order to place the fields? Absolutely not. They pretty much can go anywhere in the entry. But again, don't you worry too much about this, because I'm going to show you a shortcut of making these entries where you don't even type in anything. And that's really the beauty of the system. I'm just trying to think. There are also PhD theses that you can create entries for, and master's theses as well. I'm not sure I have one in this document, but there we go. So this is just what it's stored as. It's literally stored as in this case, refis.bib was my file name. It's just text. You can go and read the text. You can go and even edit it in here if you choose to, but you kind of make a few mistakes if you edit it in just the text version. So that's why we don't normally edit it in the text version. But let's go back to our Jabrief, and I'm hoping that you can now see. I'm just going to put this as a single thing that's better to control what I can see where I'm sharing. Okay, there we go. So the file I've actually just showed you in the text editor is exactly this file that I've loaded here as the library. So you can see all my articles, you can see my books, a couple of in collections here. And if I click on any one of these, it shows me all of the information down here. And if I go to the Bibtex source over here, I see exactly what I saw in that text editor that I showed you a minute ago. So this is the contents that you would have seen, one of the entries in that file I just showed you. And again, but you can also see it in a better way by looking at the required fields. And here you can see there's the field for author. Here's the title field. Here's the journal name of this article. It's an article type. It says so on the side here. And this is effectively the main information that is required. There's also some optional fields that you may choose to add in, things like the volume and the number and the pages. And then there's some general fields where you can just add information that's going to help you to maybe find your references if you are looking for particular references about particular keywords, for example. So you might like to here put in a keyword, and this, that you could group together references. And at a later stage, you can then search your library for all of these, or for some of the keywords that you were particularly looking for. There is the field here where you can put the abstract. So you can actually download the abstract and you can dump it in here as well, so that when you actually get to look at this entry and you can't remember what it really was about, you can actually just go and quickly read the abstract right here in this reference manager. The part that I really like about Jabrief is this section for comments. Now, when we do literature reviews for our masters or for our PhDs or even for our honors research, we end up reading a lot of stuff, a lot of literature. Some of it's going to be good, some of it's not going to be good. And this is a place where you can actually just write anything you like. This wasn't really relevant to my thesis. And so the next time you come and look at this, you can maybe go to your comment field, and before you start reading anything or rereading this document, you might like to just go and check the comments and see if you made some comments previously when you did read it, because you might have left something saying, don't bother reading this one again, it's not well written, or it's not relevant, or whatever the case is. So this field I really like because it lets you write anything. It lets you create you can even make your own notes in it about what was good about the article, and you can keep everything in one place. I'm just going to switch off my my video for a bit. It looks like my internet connection's a bit unstable. So if there are issues, please let me know, but I'm just going to turn off the video to maybe assist a little bit. Okay, so that is this entry. You can see every time you click on an entry, there's a book entry, for example. And here are the required fields for the book. All of these, the authors, the title, the year. And what I didn't mention in the previous one, this is the very important citation key. And you can either create one yourself when you're putting these entries in, or you can ask it to just randomly generate, well, it's not really random, to generate you a key. But it's always good, I think, for you to create your own keys, because then you put in the information that's important. And I like to keep the first author's name and the year, and that's kind of how I generate my citation keys. And if we then go to the Bibtex source for this entry, you'll see again that it's exactly the same, looks exactly the same as what we had in that text file that I showed you a little while ago. So there's the @book that tells me it's a book entry. There's my citation key, which I said to you was really important when you wanted to start creating your document and when you wanted to actually cite this library document as well. So that is really the important part. So now you're saying to me, oh my goodness, every time I read a piece of literature, I need to go and create a new entry. And yes, you do. So let's do that. Let's pretend that we're going to go and find some document, or we're going to go and find a piece of literature. Or maybe let's go and find the piece of literature first. That might be the better way of doing it. So let me just share my next Google Scholar screen. Okay, I'm not sure how many of you know about Google Scholar, but this is one of the sites that I use to go and find information about whatever my research topic is. So given that I quite like agent-based modeling, you'll see that I've searched for it quite often. Let's just go and find ourselves a new piece of literature that I might want to look at, and then we can see how we can enter this information for a new entry into our reference manager called Jabrief. So here we've got a proceedings on the winter simulation. I'm just trying to see what I can find here. This looks like a Springer document. Let me just go to this one and see what it is. Okay, all right, this is, I'm not quite sure what it is, but hey, it's a chapter. Okay, so it's a chapter in the proceedings. And normally what you find, well, let's just look at it and see what it says. Normally you find something like this, cite as, and it gives you kind of the options to download the citation in a number of formats. And the format that we're really interested in is this .bib format. So it looks like it's a chapter in a collection. So this is actually one that's slightly more complicated than normally an article or something like that, an article or a book. And this is what the citation would look like. And if I download on this .bib, it's hopefully going to download a .bib article for me. And if I just go to that, let me just show it in the folder first. And I will just open it as a text file because I just want to show you what it looks like. Okay. And it seems like my sharing just keeps wanting to go. Okay, I'm just going to share screen too. So then you're going to have the whole lot, all of the things that I'm looking at one time. So this is what I've just downloaded. This part here is what I've just downloaded as the citation for this document over here. Where's the document? Right at the top. Hold on, let's just go back to it. Oh goodness, it's really quite far up. There we go. So this social self-organization, which is a chapter in this book, and it has a, I'll throw that one away at the moment, and we can just look at this now. And you'll see that it's created itself as an in book, which is actually really an in collection. Sometimes the some downloads use different entry names, but that's not a big problem. We can quite easily fix that. So there you can see there's an author. There's also an editor to this one. There's a title for this actual chapter. This is the actual book title. There's a year, there's a publisher, etc. And it's even given us a URL where we can download it. So now that we know that it's an in book, what we need to go and do is, if I want to enter this as a new entry into my, I'm going to go back to my test bibliography. At the top here, we've got two pluses. There's a plus, but this is only for use with articles, because articles are commonly the most well-used entries. They've given us a separate addition point. But if I go to the one next door to it, I can see that there's a whole lot of different entry types that I can choose. So there's an article, there's a book, there's an in proceedings, there's a tech report, and there's a miscellaneous. But if I click on the others, I can see actually there is an in book, so that's fine. I can use the in book rather than the in collection, because that's what the Bibtex seems to be telling me, that this is how it's been set up. So that's great. What I'll do is I'll create a new in book. So here's my blank blue line, and this is a new in book entry. How do I know that it's a new one? Well, if I look at the Bibtex source, I see there's absolutely nothing there. There's just the entry, the in book entry. If I go to the required fields, I see there's absolutely nothing there. Now, if you really want to punish yourself and you want to do this the hard way, then you can look at your information over there, and you can start typing in the author, for example, is Dirk Helbing, and I could go and type this in here. And if I go to my Bibtex source, I can now see that I've got an author that I've typed in. And if you really are very cruel to yourself, you can go and type in all of the rest into these various required fields here, or the optional fields, depending where they fit. But there's a much quicker way of doing this. This is what I downloaded, this part over here. And this is what the people that put that literature source onto the website, they created that for me. So I'm going to assume that it's correct. I'm going to do a copy of that. I'm then going to go to the Bibtex source for this new entry. I'm going to get rid of what I had, and I'm going to paste what I've just picked up and what I've just downloaded off my Google Scholar website. And I do that. And if I now go back to the required fields, I find that everything has been populated for me. So I actually haven't typed a single thing in, but I have my entry all looking fabulous. It's got all the optional fields, well, as many as there were in the information that was given to me. The abstract has even been downloaded for me, so my abstract is sitting there for me to use. And of course, the Bibtex source is now looking like it should have looked, or how a completed Bibtex entry should look. So adding entries into this Jabrief is very much a case of downloading the Bibtex source, so the .bib or the Bibtex, different different websites call it different things. So if we can go back here, we can maybe go and try and find something else. If I can find an article, there's a book. Okay, that's a book, that's a review, that's a proceedings. This should be an article because this is the Journal of Artificials and things. So let's see what, okay, hold on, let me just go to cite. Okay, so the quick and easy way, of course, with Google Scholar is just to go and look at the citation for it. And in this case, they're referring it to as the Bibtex version. So if I now go and do a quick download of that, there indeed is the Bibtex citation. So if I want to now go and create an article type that I can fit this into, I can go back into my, let's just put that away. I can go and create a new article by clicking on the plus at the top. So there's a new article for me. You can see it's very empty, nothing in it, no optional fields, no required fields. If you go to the Bibtex source, you just see that it's a blank stub. So I can just go and delete that blank stub. I can go back to where I found the information for that article, do a quick copy and a quick paste. And I go back to the required fields and hey presto, the article has been entered for me and everything is up to date. The one thing that I didn't mention when we put in the in-book one, what I normally do is I normally go and just double check the citation key. Remember I said to you that I quite like my own style of putting in citation keys, and I normally use the author and some kind of date. And it looks like this citation key is spot on, that fits mine, but I could change it if I don't like that citation key. I could change it to whatever my style is. If I go and check the article one, I see it's got one of the authors, it's got Heath, it's got a date, which is 2009, but I don't normally like to make my keys too large. So I'm just going to delete that. And from now, this article citation key is just going to be the author and the date. And that's about the only thing that I do go and check once I've actually downloaded and once I've updated, copy pasted the information into my Jabrief reference manager. So I've now got 3 entries in my Jabrief reference manager. I can see that there's some unsaved information. If I look at the top here, there's a little star next to my test.bib. So this library hasn't been saved away. So just to make sure that you save all the new entries and that they're not going to get lost, there's I've now saved my test.bibliography, and it's ready for me to now use wherever I need to use it. And that's pretty much all that you really need to know about putting things into Jabrief. If you don't like something, if you've entered something that you don't want, you can highlight it by clicking on it, and then you can use this trash can delete up there, and it'll actually make it go away at the click. You can undo and redo things if you made a mistake, but honestly, there's not that much anything more. There's some quick ways of saving. Over here is also just the save library that you can do another. But remember that if you want to save all your libraries that you have open, there's also a save all, which will then make, if you've made any, I've put something in there, let me not do that. There's an untitled library that it was trying to ask me where it should save it. That was a library that I created, and just to show you what it looked like when you started off with a blank file. So I won't save that one. So there's the test bib is the one we've been working with. This is the one I showed you with lots of entries in it. And now if there's any questions about this reference manager before I then move on to show you what the LaTeX formatting or writing tool is all about, or give you an intro to it at least. Okay.
Yes, Karin.
Okay, hi, yes.
Hi, how are you?
Good.
Yeah, thanks for giving me the opportunity. I just wanted to find out if this JabRef, is it this operating in a similar way as the Mendeley? I'm not too sure.
Yeah.
If you are...
Yeah, sorry, you might have missed it at the beginning. It's exactly the same. It's a reference manager like Mendeley, Zotero. There's a whole pile of them. Yeah, so that's very much what you would have in Mendeley. It's just a nice, small, very compact, very easy to use. I find it much easier to use than Mendeley, and it also, just as an aside, it does work with Word. Don't ask me how, because I don't use Word. Well, certainly not to write anything more than a page, but it does interface as well with Word, and there are some websites and there are some documents. In fact, I could probably fish one out of how to interface the Jabrief bibliography files because it's just a text file. It's just a text file that has been stored in this Bibtex format.
Okay, thank you. So the time when I joined in, you were saying something like the storage is on the cloud and something like that. So I wanted to find out if to use it, does it mean that you need to have internet?
No, you don't need to have internet access, because it's when you download it, this is what I was showing you. That's a little app that is running on my computer.
Oh, okay.
So it's running on my computer. I don't ever need to have internet. If I'm storing it on my laptop, if I'm storing the library files, the thing that I called test.bib on my laptop, then I don't need any internet to be able to use my reference manager.
All right, just the last question is, so at Rhodes University, do you perhaps require us to use a specific app, or we can use any one of them that we...
That's what you need to ask your department. Some departments do have specifications. I can't talk for all the departments. Okay. In our department, we certainly don't have a prescripted one or a prescribed one. You can use whichever reference manager you feel comfortable doing so.
All right, thank you very much.
Okay, so I have some questions in the chat. It says, does it have referencing styles when one wants to use APA or Harvard? That's not really up to the reference manager. The reference manager, which is what this Jabrief is just storing the information. So I can use this information that I've stored in this reference manager to do any of those citation styles that you've mentioned. And I'm going to actually show you that when I show you the LaTeX system, because the way that the citation styles are built into how LaTeX works. So it's not really the reference manager that decides what style of referencing you use. It's the writing tool that would dictate how you use it. And in this case, LaTeX, I will show you exactly how I can use the same information to print out things in different referencing styles. Do I have to uninstall Endnote? No, absolutely not. You can keep as many reference managers on your laptop as you want. You don't have to uninstall anything. This is just a simple program that stands alone and can be used on its own. So nothing needs to be uninstalled for you to install Jabrief. And you can at any time uninstall Jabrief if you don't like it. It takes up a very small amount of storage space on your laptop. It's a very small program. And of course, then also you just need to store the libraries. Obviously, your libraries can get quite big, and that'll then use slightly more storage. But the program itself uses very little storage. Can I save the articles locally as well? You can save these files wherever you want to. You can put them in the cloud, and you can put them onto your laptop. You can save them as many different places, wherever you want them to be saved. They're just files on your computer. And when I showed you the editor, the text version, it's literally just it's just a text file. It's like any of your Word docs or your Excel spreadsheets. It's just a local file that you can put anywhere you want to. It's up to you where you save it. Okay, that's covered, I think, those questions in the chat. Please stop me if they haven't covered them well enough, or if there's still more. Okay, so what I've now showed you is how you can use this Jabrief tool. It's a very simple little tool to keep track of all your references, sorry, I was just reading the chat at the same time. It's very difficult to keep my eye on all these things. You can export refs from Mendeley to Jabrief. You certainly can, because as I said, it's just a very simple file. And I will actually, that's just one thing I can actually show you, is that if you were to have done something like that and exported your references that you currently have in a different file manager. So what I'm going to just do is just show you what could happen in that case. So let us pretend, I'm just going to close this, that one. Let us pretend that, I've got myself lost here. No, not quite yet. Here's a file, refis.bib, which I actually have got in my, in Jabrief, but let's pretend this was the file that you exported. So if you had just a file like this that you'd exported, and if you, as long as the file was called something.bib, and you can, of course, change that because this is just a little file, you can then open a file that is something.bib in your Jabrief program, your Jabrief app. And the way you would do it is you would go to your Jabrief and you would say open library, because that library, this is essentially just a library. And if I want to then go and open it, and I see that that was my test. No, sorry, what was it called? It was called refis. Sorry, it was that one. And if I open it, there's the library. So if you wanted to export your references from some other reference manager, it will go into some kind of text file like this. As long as you change the name, the suffix of the name, in other words, the type of file, as long as you change it to .bib, and as long as you've exported it in the Bibtex format, then you can just open it into Jabrief, and you can then go and edit and do what you like and change things and add things and pretty much do what you need it to do. So actually to export something, as long as you've exported it into the Bibtex format, you can just then open it by using Open Library, or you can even import it by using the import key if in case it's not in exactly the right format. So there's lots of ways of getting the information into this Jabrief tool. All right, so that's pretty much, we now have our references in a file called something.bib. And we can now go and look at this LaTeX tool, which is not quite the same as Word. So you're not going to be able to see your formatting appearing. So if you want to bold something or write something in bold, you're not going to actually see it looking like bold. So the second link that I gave you was the one about Overleaf. And Overleaf has really revolutionized this use of LaTeX. In the past, it used to be a real nightmare because you would have to set up the LaTeX system on your computer and you would have to download a number of packages, and it was sometimes quite cumbersome. Overleaf is an online cloud-based system. So for this, you would need access to the internet. So let me just get my Overleaf setup going. Oh goodness, I have forgotten where I put it. Heavens alive, I've got far too many things come in here. Okay, there we go. All right, I'm not sure if you can see this new pink screen at the top that says Overleaf. Okay. So when you start Overleaf, you will obviously have nothing in your system. Did I have one? There we go. No, let's go back to that. Okay, but I'm just going to first show you what a LaTeX document actually looks like, just so that you can first get an idea, and then I can go back and explain various things to you. So this is what the Overleaf system looks like, and it is running, as I said, it's running not on my computer. This Overleaf is now going to the cloud source, and what you can see is you've got some kind of Explorer type based thing on the left over here. You've then got some kind of worksheet here in the middle, which is where you're going to type your document in. And as I said, it doesn't look anything like Word, because this is not a WYSIWYG system. Now, we talk about WYSIWYG in computer science all the time. WYSIWYG, and I'm going to actually just put it into the chat so that you WYSIWYG. So that's what WYSIWYG is, and it stands for what you see is what you get. And this is not one of those. This is not what you see is what you get, because what you see is this part in the middle here. And it's got a couple of things in this blue, which are what we call the commands. So it's a command-driven formatting system. And then what you see is this, but what you get is this wonderfully laid out system on the side over here, which looks kind of like a document if it didn't have a frog looking at us. Mind you, it might even have a frog in certain disciplines. You would probably quite like the idea of a frog. And there's your references, in this case, all of one reference that I had. So what you see is what is in the middle here. What you get is this wonderful layout on the right. So now you're going to look at, say to me, well, that looks awfully complicated, what I'm seeing on this middle thing. But the absolute joy of it is that you don't have to worry about what size font you're going to make your headings, or what size, how many spaces or line breaks they're going to be between the two headings, or how to do beautiful mathematical formatting, or where, you know, how your positioning of your figure is and how to put the caption in. Because each of these individual little components that I'm pointing out here are actually incredibly easy to create, even though we have to create them in a non-WYSIWYG way. And that means we're going to have to put a command in front of what we want to actually do some of these things that I've put over here. So the first thing that you have to understand about this LaTeX system is that it has a number of predefined styles. So this, for example, is what we have called an article style. And you can see that it looks very much like an academic article that you might have read, where there's some kind of title, your author's names would be over here, etc. There might be an abstract. In this case, there's a very small abstract. And then you've got a whole lot of sections, and you ended off with the references at the bottom. So this is an article style. There's another style that's called a report style. And if I recompile, I change one word over here, and I recompile what I'm going to get, you suddenly see that this thing appears very differently. Because a report normally has a separate title page, which has the title and the authors and a date. And then it has a separate page for an abstract. And then it has the introduction and the sections, etc., etc. And ultimately, it's got a thing that it even calls a bibliography and not references anymore. So by changing one simple word, I can make it look differently. I can take the same content, I haven't changed anything to what my document was, and I can actually put it into a different style. There's even a thing called a book style. Whoops, sorry. There we go. And if I recompile it, and recompiling just means re-rendering it. Just change it now. Go and reread what I've typed, and reread what I've typed in here, and put it now into a book style. And a book style probably needs some chapters, so it's not 100% correct. You'll see that these section numbers, as they were in the report, because reports typically have chapters and sections, and my system here didn't have it. But I could actually remedy that quite quickly. And I'll just put in a chapter so that it doesn't look funny. Chapter, starting chapter. And if I re-render now, it should hopefully get that right. And we will see we've now got the book, the abstract on a separate page. And there's a wonderful setting for my chapter 1, etc. And this is the chapter 1 of my book. And there's the whole lot of sections. And once again, books normally have bibliographies, and it knows that. So it's now put my references into a bibliography. And if I go back and actually change this back to the report, you'll see that the report will render better now with the chapter in it as well. And it will start off with the correct sectioning. Let's just make sure. Yep, there we go. Because reports also typically have the ability to put chapters in. So that's the first thing that you need to understand about the LaTeX environment, because it is an environment for setting up, writing your documents. And each of these article, report, and book, they have their own settings. And you really can go and change them yourself if you don't like the settings, if you would rather that the text was here in 11 point or 12 point, I'm not sure what it is. It looks like it could be 12 point. You can possibly go and change it to, let's see what happens if we change it to 10 point. Let me just recompile and see if it looks any different. Oh, well, it's going to look different because I've taken out the chapter. Okay, so that's, okay, let's not confuse the issue. We got down to that. Let's go back. Let's change it to 12 point now and see if the text gets a little bit bigger. Yep, way bigger. So you can make minor changes to the formatting, even though that it's got its own versioning. You can go and change things subtly and slightly by doing quite a number of things over here. But pretty much the article style is you have a title, you have the authors, you have a date, you have some kind of abstract, and then you have a whole pile of sections. And you'll see we're going to get back to references at the bottom here, which is what typically happens in an article. So that's kind of what your basic layout is going to be covered by what you put at the top here. Whether you have an article, whether you have a book, you can even have a style for a thesis. In our department, we've got our own thesis style, and all you do is you plug in the name of the thesis style, and whatever you write will look like a Rhodes thesis. All right, let's go down a little bit then further to see what all some of these other things are. There's a couple of things that you can say use package. And these packages are things that kind of tailor the style that you've created. So if you want to do a whole lot of maths equations, you're probably going to need this AMS maths package, because that'll then be able to interpret things like backslash fraction, backslash dots, L dots, backslash sigma. And any of you that are doing maths or physics will be quite comfortable with all of these this information. Graphics is if you want to include some figures, you need to include this package. If you want to include the notes, the to-do notes that you see up here, this is things to yourself that you can put in little to-dos or put in comments. You need to include this package. Okay, the title, actually, let me just respond to this question that says, how does one start if there's no LaTeX template available for a given journal? Then I'm going to have to say most scientific journals that I've found will have a LaTeX template. There's also some sort of general templates, like all the publishing houses. Springer has a whole lot of templates. Elsevier has a whole lot of templates. Likewise, I'm sure a lot of the other publishing houses would do. If not, you start off with an article style, and then you see how best you can tailor it. You can also create your own class file, which is what we did in the computer science department, to create our own thesis file, but that takes a little bit more expertise in terms of creating your own style. So if your journal really doesn't have a LaTeX template, then it's probably, and there's nothing that's similar, then it's probably not a good idea to try and do it in LaTeX, although you normally will find something that is very similar to what a Word template is that somebody has created. All right, backslash title. This is the thing that is going to give you your title. Backslash author is a command that allows you to type in your author information. So if I type in Karen Bradshaw and I recompile it, it's hopefully going to put Karen Bradshaw there at that point. The date, you can either type in a special date, or you can just ask it to give you today's date. If you don't want the date, you don't have to use that command. And if you just put two, in fact, you don't even need two, you just need 1 percentage sign, and it disappears completely. And you'll see that your title now no longer has the date. It shouldn't have the date. Oh my goodness, this is very interesting. Why is the date? Okay, all right, let me just get rid of that. Title, author, make title. This is very strange that it's not giving me no date. All right, I'll have to see what I've done wrong at some point. Unless the articles, no, the article style doesn't normally have a date. Okay, there's something funny going on here. I will just come back to that or sort that out at a later point. And then once you've got all your title information put in there, that's crazy, it shouldn't have a date. Let me just take it out. Once you've got all your title information, you do a begin document, and then the very first command you give it is to say, make the title. And what make the title then does is actually create that title for you. We've got things that we call environments, and they always start with a begin, and then they end with an end. So backslash is the command, is the character that starts a command in LaTeX. So any command will always start with the backslash character. So I can begin the abstract environment, and whatever I type in here will be the abstract information that gets put over there. 2% signs will make no difference. It just turns this into a comment. So as you can see, if I take it out, it comes back. And the minute I put a percentage sign in there, it just turns it into a comment. And so it's not something that it's going to render. Sorry, that was just a private comment. It'll make no difference to the system. It'll still render in exactly the same way. And I'm not quite sure why it's not taking away that, that date. I might just have to do a recompile from scratch. Let me try that. Sometimes it gets a little bit confused with life. And then we just have to, no, it still doesn't like my May the 4th. I'll have to work out why it's still putting in the date. I really don't know, because article styles don't normally have dates in them. I'll have to double check that. Okay, the abstract is what the piece goes in this environment with the begin abstract, end abstract, and we end up with whatever you write there is going to be coming into the abstract here. So I can continue writing here and it will go into the abstract. There we go. And then if I recompile, I will see that I've now got a slightly larger abstract that is awaiting over there. Right, then we get into the nitty-gritty. I've taken out the chapter because articles don't normally have chapters, but if you were writing a thesis, for example, you would have a chapter. \section is the command that starts one of these sections. And as you can see, I don't tell it how to number the sections. Every time it sees section, it's going to increment this number, but it does it completely of its own will. So if I were to go and delete this whole section here, this introduction section, and if I just go and take it away, delete it, and if I render it, what's going to happen is that this some LaTeX examples is going to become section 1. So all the numbering is done completely automatically by the system. We don't have to worry about it. It just happens. And if we make changes, or if I bring it back again, I can bring it back and it'll just keep working fantastically. Subsections are these next sections. So 1.1, this would be a subsection. And again, its numbering is just worked out completely correctly with depending on which section it's contained in. And the subsection numbering will happen every time it finds a subsection. It will just increment this numbering downwards. So pretty much to be able to create sections and text and subsections, all you really need to know is to use the \subsection, \section, and you type your text in. Now, what I did say was that you can't really bold something in the text here. So for example, if I wanted to bold this word comments, I haven't really got a command here that says bold, but I can actually just put in a \text and it comes up with some suggestions here for you. And BF stands for boldface. And then whatever I put in the curly braces is the thing that's going to be bolded. Let's make it a little bit longer so we can actually see the bolding easily. Let's just take that right up to there. And if we then go recompile, we should now see that this part here, text is now in boldface. And if I don't want it now to be in bold, but I maybe want it to be in italics, I change the command to text IT, which is the text must be italics. And again, if I recompile, what I can get to see here now is hopefully that your comments can be added. There we go. That's now turned into some kind of italics. So it's not what you see is what you get, but you can very simply and very easily change things to look like what you want. This to-do that's here sets up this kind of comment, this thing in orange here. So maybe if you're writing your article and there's something that you forget or that you haven't yet worked out what to say, you can maybe just put a to-do in saying, fix this up or add a little bit here, and you then end up with some kind of comment over there. There's also another way of doing an inline comment, this thing in green. And in fact, you can change it into any color that you want to. You can do that with this to-do command over there. And that's just ways of you to put some things, reminders to yourself to say, maybe this paragraph hasn't been finished. Please come back here and don't forget to finish it. All right, I want to talk a little bit about the figures. So this is a figure, and this picture has been stored here in this figure up here called frog.jpg. So we've loaded this figure into the system here. And so now we can use whatever we've loaded in here, we can actually use in the text. What I didn't actually explain at the beginning is that main.text.tex, T-E-X, is this part, this file that I'm writing in and I'm changing things in here. So the things that I've loaded into this setup is a main.tex. There's the frog picture. And I've also loaded in one of my bibliographies, test.bib, so that I can show you how the citations work. So let's go back to the figure. What we typically need to do if we want to put a figure in here is we start one of these environments. And this is a figure environment. So there's a begin figure and there's an end figure down here. And there's a command that says centering. And what that does is it puts the figure in the middle of the page. If I take that out, or if I just comment it out and I recompile, you'll see what it'll do is it will put it on the side, the actual figure. And that's not really very beautiful. So we'll maybe just put it back into the center. But centering just means put the figure in the middle of the page, horizontally centered. This command here, include graphics, that's the command that says include the file called frog.jpg. So it's a JPEG file. It could be a picture, it could be a bitmap file, it could be any file that you've got a picture as, or it could be something you've drawn yourself. And it just tells it to put the file in that file. And it tells it that it says, I want the size to be 1/3 of what the text, what the actual size is of the page. So if I want it to be bigger, I can change that and I can make it slightly bigger. I can want it to have as half the text width. And then you'll see what will happen. It's going to go back into the center because I changed that again. And now there's no space on that one, but you'll see that it's now much larger back in the center because I told it to go back into the center, and it's a slightly bigger picture. So I can kind of change the size up and down as I wish as well. How do I get this caption underneath it? Well, that's what this command caption does here. So caption and the frog, this writing here is what's going to be put in as the figure caption. And once again, I don't have to worry about what figure number this is. It's going to automatically increment the figure numbers every time it finds one of these figure environments. So I don't have to worry and say, please call this figure 1. It'll automatically give it a figure number. And I can get hold of being able to reference this figure because you'll see somewhere up here in the text, I said, see the code for figure 1 in this section for an example. So here I'm actually referring to figure 1. How do I do that? Well, the first thing I do is I give this figure a label. I've called this figure my fig frog. And then when I want to refer to it, I just see, here's the piece of code, see the code for figure. And I can't say figure 1 because I don't know what the figure number is, but I do a reference to figure frog. And figure frog then gets, this reference then gets translated into whichever figure number the system has given this frog figure. So again, putting things, referring to figures, and if you want to change the order of your figures, no problem. The system will sort it all out and all your references will be sorted out beautifully by the system. I'm not going to talk about how to do this mathematics. There is, I think we're running out of time a little bit. So let me rather talk about some of these other formatting things that I've got at the bottom here. So my files down here, how can we make a list? So how can I make a list with bullet points 1, 2? Often we want to put an enumerated list in this, and there's point 2. And I do that with another environment that's called the enumerate environment. Sorry about that. So the enumerate environment says, tell me what items you want in your list. So like this is one item, and like this is the second item. And what the system does is it automatically pops it into list with a list here with items 1 and 2. If you don't want an enumerated list, in other words, with numbers 1 and 2, and you just want some bullet points like this, what you do is you use an environment called Itemize. And again, here's your 2 items, but this is looking very boring. So let's change this to coffee and chocolate, something like that, which would go down quite well right now. There we go. And if we do a recompile, you'll end up with coffee and chocolate. All right. So this is how you can do lists. And you can also do words with descriptions or definitions with an environment called a description. And there you have the word and its definition, and that comes out like this word with its definition. And this brings us now to how do we cite? How do we cite those references that we put into our Jabrief bibliography? So the way we cite, here we've got a citation which shows us it's citation 1. And the way we do it is we use this command, \cite. And what do we put inside here? We put in that key that I told you was the thing that you had to remember. But in fact, when you do a citation, I'll just redo this, \cite. Hold on, and it comes up with there. And now it's not going to do it for me. I'm not sure what I'm doing here. I seem to have lost my, there we go. Let's just do that. It normally comes up with the options that you've got in your bibliography. I will show you, I'll fix that up in a minute as well. And then that cite then gets translated into this one, and the references get put according to that. But this is where we're going to go back to one of the questions that we had earlier and said, well, what if I don't want numbered citations? Maybe I want author date. Maybe I want APA type citations. Maybe I want Vancouver citations. And this is when I said to you, this is where the style that you tell your system to use comes into play. So this command down here, bibliography style here, with ACM style, this is what is dictating whether I've got numbered citations here in the text and whether I've got and how my references get put in the reference section. So if I don't want numbered style, maybe I want something like the APA-like style, then I'm just going to comment out this one. And I'm going to go back and open up that APA-like style. And I'm going to recompile my document, and I hope this time it works. And what you immediately see is that the citation has changed to being an APA-like author date style. And you can see that the actual way that the reference has been put into the section has also changed. So by changing a single little word over here, I can change the way my citations are rendered in this document, and also the way the references are going to be put here. Depending on what style you're using, sometimes the references are in alphabetic order, sometimes they're in numbered order of first use, sometimes they're in alphabetic numbered order, and that is all dependent on the type of referencing you're using. So there's the APA-like author date style. There's another one that I quite often use, which is the NatBib style. This is very common in our field in computer science. And the only thing that this needs to do is, in order for me to use this style, I also have to include a different package called natbib.style. And I also have to change the command from not being cite, but being this one down here. So let me just open that up. And let me just uncomment the natbib.style. I need that up here. And then I can recompile it, and it'll hopefully now give it to me in natbib style, which, as you can see now, the reference, the way the reference has been put is different to the APA-like style. And I've still got an author date style over here, but it's also, the formatting is slightly different from the one that we had with the APA-like. So changing the referencing style is just really changing this one command from being whatever style I want to have at that point. So we've kind of getting close to running out of time. I'm not quite sure what else, there must be some more comments. I have actually set what I've used over here. I've already set up as a link in a Google Drive. So if you want to download this set of files that I had here, I'm going to put a link in the chat. There is actually a link that you can download, basically these three files, the frog.jpg, the test.bib, which actually only has one entry in it. You can, of course, don't make your own JabRef entries and put them in. And the main.txt, which has kind of got this little example program here, which sort of gives you an idea of a couple of things that you would use if you were creating an article, for example. But it's probably a good starting point where you can sort of use a couple of the things, see what happens when you change them. All you have to do to use that, it's a zip file that I've got in this Google link. But all you need to do when you want to use it is literally just to go back to Overleaf and say you want a, hold on, oops, wrong one, new project, this thing up in green at the top here, which I couldn't see. And you can say you want to do it from an upload project. So use the upload project. And here it says select a zip file. So the thing that you download from the Google Drive, you can just drag and drop your zip file into it over here. And it will then set you up with a project that's called example paper, exactly like the one that we've just been covering. And I can just click on it again. And there's our example project or example paper with the examples that I've just gone through. And I have absolutely no idea why the date doesn't want to go away. It ought not to be in this thing at all. And it still is very insistent on remaining. And all I can think is that the article style that we're using has by default a date section in it. Although I've never actually seen that as a problem before. Yeah, that's all I can actually imagine, is that there is a date by default in this article system, unless I have it somewhere else and I don't know that I've included it, but it doesn't look like it. If it's this, hold on, let me just do that. No, it's not that. Okay, I was just thinking that it might be. All right, so any more questions or any questions? Is there an efficient way to track changes in your LaTeX document? Not as you, oh goodness, review. There is a way that you can do commenting here at the top here. You can see there's a review system here. And here you can see that track changes is off. And if I were to turn it on so that people can see for me or for guests, etc., you can actually track your changes at this point here. So if you were to kill that, there's my track changes. So yes, the answer is yes. Okay. You can actually also share these Overleaf documents. This is the wonderful thing too. You might have noticed when I had all my projects up there, I've got all of my students' projects in here, and that they share them with me. I can make comments, I can track changes. If you're using the free system, you can only share it with one person, but there is also a licensed version, and then you can share one document with a number of people. Does this mean once I start using LaTeX, I cannot import anything from MS Word? You can import it, of course you can. You can put it in. You're just going to know that you're just going to be bringing the text in. So you can import stuff from MS Word. You'll get all the text, but you're going to then have to go and add all of these commands and these the LaTeX commands, because it's only going to pick up the text, and it's not going to pick up your bolded word text, a word, or your italics, or a 14 point versus a 12 point. It'll pick it up just all as text. So you can certainly go and put it in as a starting point, and then you just go and fill in your backslash sections and your backslash subsections, etc. But it is really, it's a bit of a learning curve to start with until you get the habit. And then once you've actually got the habit, it becomes a very simple way of writing documents and being able to, if you're writing conference papers or journal papers and it gets rejected from one journal, you just go and change the template for the new journal by changing this one little word at the top here, and you can then reformat it into one of the other journal styles without having to go and manually reformat everything if you had a Word document. With the already written document, how do I put it in? That's when I said to you, you just go to the top here, you say new project, upload project, and then drag the zip file into this. And then it'll create you an example paper. So this is the project example paper it will create for you in your landing page. which is this one, as I said, that I've been working on. All right. I thought there was a comment above here that I needed to read out. Okay, just a reminder that there is a comment to a comment in the chat to everyone to please remember that you'll get the recording and that to please fill in the evaluation form, and there's a link at the bottom there. If you just scroll up in the chat a little bit, there is a link. So I think I've said about as much as I can say for an introduction, but we can always have another one later in the year if there's more exciting stuff that you need to do or a refresher. And do I offer a course about it? Not at the moment, no. Maybe that's what I should be doing. But yeah. All right. I hope you've taken away a little bit about what LaTeX can do for you. And even if, as I said, if you don't use LaTeX, that Jabrief bibliography or reference manager is really a simple tool and a very useful one to have lying around on your computer. Okay, so that's it from me.
Well, thank you so much, Prof. I do echo all the sentiments on the chats that this has been a wonderful presentation, a good presentation for us to learn in terms of how to use the softwares, and also, you know, depending on what type of research you're doing in terms of the tool choices of softwares. So thank you so much, you know, for joining us, for gracing us, and also for sharing your knowledge. We really appreciate it at CPGS. Also, I'd like to thank all the participants who have been here. Just a quick reminder for you guys to please do the evaluation form. That evaluation form is very important for us to shape the discussions that will assist you. Perhaps you can even say it in the evaluation form that it would be nice to have another session with Prof. Second semester, so as to refresh and also, you know, assist more in terms of understanding these two softwares. Also, join us next week. The communication about next week will be sent on Monday next week with regards to next week seminar, which, if I'm not mistaken, is about literature review. But I'll send that as soon as possible. The recording will be sent to you by tomorrow, if not Friday, and it will be sent to all the registered participants, but also please follow our YouTube page. That is where all other engagements are posted, so as to refresh yourself in terms of other discussions that you might have missed or need a refresher on. Thank you so much. Do have a beautiful Wednesday further. Thanks, Prof. Goodbye.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks for attending. Bye-bye.
Bye, Prof.